So if you can start to see everything in your life as a form of initiation and full-heartedly embrace the suffering to the point where the fear of the suffering actually diminishes and diminishes and diminishes, and your surrender, the surrender of that suffering and the resistance behind the suffering, given back to source, back to God, surrendered, then this happens very quickly. And there's no better tool than suffering for this. Now, you don't have to create more suffering for yourself deliberately in order to do this. If you pay attention, you don't need as much suffering. Literally, if you were to do what you want to establish in yourself, if you paid attention more, and this takes training and subtlety and intuition and learning, but the more aware you become of what your higher self wants of you next, thy will, what is thy will? You can begin to observe the, in a sense, absurdity of whatever you desire that's not that, and see how it's a contradicting flow to your higher self's true desire, or God's desire, if you will. If you can learn that way, you can correct yourself. You don't have to continue in this selfish direction because you believe something, because there's a delusion, but you really don't want to let go of it, because if you let go of it, then your fulfillment disappears and da-da-da. But if you go in that direction, continue, then there's no other way for you to course correct but to pull a full stop on yourself, aka catalyst, suffering, intensity, drama, whatever, betrayal, abandonment, diseases, all these things. So if you can pay attention and kind of start hovering in between your personal physical mind and your higher mind, kind of be a mediator, almost like a marriage mediator, and you're there like, okay, you listen to your higher self's desires, you listen to your personal desires, both are fine, both are valid, and see if you can harmonize that. This is wisdom. This is learning faster. So you can actually, with imagination and intuition and paying attention, with self-awareness, you can course correct in a very harmonious way. You don't have to create suffering. But the suffering that is there, not maybe even the new catalyst that you're producing, although that too, but even the suffering that's the trace elements from your past, the beliefs that haven't fully resolved yet, the traumatic events that have occurred that you haven't fully processed yet or forgiven yet at some level. So those trace elements of suffering, we can use those too to peel ourselves open more. And this takes courage, yes. But do you have a better suggestion? Right? So you have the trace amounts of suffering left. What do you suggest? I suggest you give it up. You just give up your allegiance to it. It can be there, it can arise, but you give up your allegiance to it. It's no longer the instructor in your life. It's no longer your swim coach. You're going to swim wherever the fuck you're going to swim based on a new intelligence that's unblocked. It's the willingness. The willingness brings everything to you that you need. And yes, it will still reveal the layers that you have. You're not going to escape the layers to purify. They're going to come up. And you can accelerate that process, yet make it less intense or less painful by doing it willingly. You already volunteered, so don't stop volunteering midway because it makes no sense. Continue to volunteer. Continue to volunteer your feelings, your emotions, your actions, your sacrifices, your love, your passion. Continue to believe in what you're here for. Does this make sense? It's just one view, but... So more and more, the more you suffer, the more you feel like, whether it's like a catalytic suffering, like it's an ouchie, like a big in the moment ouchie, like, oh fuck, I feel that. Or whether it's sort of a slowly self-destructive layering armor that kind of just like fears this and that, and da-da-da, whatever kind of form or shape or nuance of suffering it is, when you notice it, when you're aware of it, instead of making it dependent on objects, and if you look, it's always what you do when you continue to suffering, when you don't step into the willingness. Shift it from object dependency to God dependency. So what I mean by that is surrender it to God, basically, whatever it is. Whether it's ouchie, an in-the-moment slap in your face, ouch. Whether it's a rejection or it's a fear that's triggered by something, or something actually happens, or someone leaves you, or you get insulted, or whatever, and in the moment, ouchie, like you didn't see it coming, like, oh, shit, slap in the face. You can't avoid it. You can't strategically, like, or at least not as much. Some people are very good at it, but not as much. It's in your face. Your body language shows it. You're exposed. You're triggered. You're in pain. It's uncomfortable. You have a perspective. You have a belief. You have a reason. Now, the reason this continues to go on and is harbored is because it's in our minds, we make it have something to do with an object or a person, which I include as object right now in this equation. Anything that kind of moves or is noticeable to you as a subject. Does that make sense? So if you look, okay, why am I holding on to this? Or why am I shying away from this? Or why am I unwilling? Or why am I afraid of the suffering? Or why am I holding on to it when I know I can let go of it? It's because you've made it object dependent in some way, situation dependent, person dependent, and so forth. Does that make sense? So there's some dependency, there's some line going out towards something you're projecting as an object that somehow this has to do with. If you can scrap all that and throw it into the emptiness, the fire of surrendering it to God, suddenly the whole flavor of your suffering changes. Have you had this experience where it just burns off because you just surrender it and there's this big relief that comes in, almost bliss even while you still hurt? It's like the bittersweet perfection starts to shine through kind of thing, and the release. So it's like that. But it happens the moment you remember to give your suffering back to God, to donate it, to volunteer it back to God, to merge again with Source, and not make it about a thing or a person or a past or a future event or anything like that, or an object or a sports car or whatever, or the best cigar in the world. I mean, that one kind of makes sense. But if you notice you're holding on to yourself, huh? Did someone say something? Well, yeah. Almost no exception. Yeah, the cigar comes this one. But you give it to God. And when you give it to God, the whole flavor changes. You feel unconquerable. You still feel the pain, maybe, or at least trace effects of it. And it moves through, but you feel it's the alchemizing process right now. Instead of the same sort of rusty iron burning and burning and burning, it's like, okay, the burn is still there, but you can see how it's being turned to gold. It's like there's a chemical process at work here. There's a divinity that's starting to be revealed that transmutes the whole experience. And suddenly you get insights of why you suffered, why you chose that, how it makes sense, and so forth, instead of opposing your own suffering and feeling bad about it and judging it and so forth. Make sense? All right. So a very simple step. You just have to remember, oh, fuck, I'm making it about a person. I'm making it about an object. I'm making it about a cigar. I'm making it about an event in time. I'm making it about how someone else sees me. All are objects. None of these things are God. Well, they all are God, but they're not God directly. You know what I mean? So change your relationship from objects to things, especially when you suffer. And you find your heart opens, your willingness increases, your mission readiness goes up, your self-judgment dissolves, the bliss returns, and you're dancing again. You're dancing in your own way. You're dancing. You're flowing.